Today I'm taking you out to the lower Sieg River Valley in the town of Blankenberg. Take note of the 7 mountains in the distance to the right. We will remain within sight of these mountains, even though it's a 75-kilometer loop. Commenting is, as you hear in English, because this is not something very exotic to a German rider. This is very well-traveled terrain, but to an international cyclist it may be interesting to see how much landscape you can have right on the margins of a mega metropolitan area of probably 11 million people or so. Here I'm leaving town on the levee of the Rhine. The Rhine is to the left here. You can't see it because it's behind the trees. And this is the levee of the Sieg River. The Sieg River Valley, the lower valley, is remarkable because it is flooding area, so it cannot be built up. It is levied in, so that the settlements to the left and right of the levees are safe. That in between remains a big enough space which makes for very good cycling. Only the first few kilometers are on the Sieg River levee. Then it is across the meadows, which could be flooded at high water. And as you see here, the trail is wide and paved, very good to ride, very popular on weekends, but on a weekday morning, like this morning, it is rather empty. And the river is right behind those trees ahead. And after the next curve, the trail will follow the river more or less exactly for a bit. The river is rather popular among kayakers and canoeists. Let's take a look at it. It's very quiet and usually has sufficient water. It's not very deep, but carries sufficient water. See, this is the look to the west. When you're paddling through, it's very nice. Let's take an aerial view of this so you can see the river meadows that give you the impression that you're all on your own, all by yourself, out in the countryside, whereas in reality there is urban settlements, metropolitan, suburban environments all around. In the back there, that's the city of Bonn. That's where I come from. And you see that stretch of the river meadows is maybe a kilometer wide, maybe a bit more at certain parts. But it's built up areas to the left and right of it. Here's an artificial lake, probably created by sand mining. See there, it's all villages, towns, motorways, highways, so there are various major highways running through. And nothing of that you see when you're cycling by the river. And there's the 7 mountains again. Okay, let's go on. There's one climb on that river trail stretch, and this is this. We're connecting to another trail which has to cross the highway right next to the trail here. That's the bridge across the highway. And we go down on the other side So that's the only climbing that you have to do as long as you stay on the Sieg River Trail. Otherwise, it is nicely laid out because the river is meandering. Also, the trail alongside the river meanders, and that makes for some very nice cycling. Not as smooth a ride as on a public road, but still good enough for pleasant riding, I'd say. And pay attention to the right after that little bridge. As this is close to villages and towns, you have to reckon with pedestrians everywhere. Here we're back on a stretch which runs on the Sieg River levee. The Sieg River is to our left, as mostly in this part, and it's very well done, very smooth, fine asphalt. That's a joy to ride. Every once in a while there is a distraction from the nature aspect of this. This is the A3 Autobahn, a major north-south artery, probably the most busy Autobahn in the west of Germany, running from Cologne to Frankfurt, which I'm passing under here. But once on the other side, you're back into totally rural countryside. Now I'm approaching Hennef. I'll skip Hennef for you and show you the next village beyond Hennef, which is very pretty, I think. Also very small. And beyond this little village, the trail is back to what it was before Hennef. Riding along the river meadows, which are not being built up because they are a flooding area. As we're reaching this big dairy farm to the right, it is time to leave the river trail and head to the town of Blankenberg. This is the road now approaching Blankenberg, which has a town in its name, but actually it is a village. It has it in its name since 1954 or so because it lost its independence and the people wanted to remind themselves of the fact that they once used to be an independent town. The ruins of a castle that you see up there go back about 900 years or so. And it has changed ownership numerous times. But originally, this castle was controlling the center of a small duchess, basically that part of the Sieg River Valley that you can more or less see from up there, which is stretching to the west and east and flanked in by mountains to both north and south. So this was a strategic point. You can the counts of Zein, who were the original owners, they could control their entire territory from there. The climb up, as you see, is pretty steep, but it gives you a nice approach to the town and castle, which used to be a single entity. So the castle was not constructed independent of the town, but the town and castle were one big fortification, of which not that much has been left. I think it has been in the early 19th century. The fortifications have been taken down. The city walls are almost gone, except for a few. You see the dungeon there on the left side. That's still left, but a lot of the fortress, the former fortress, has disappeared. You switch back later. I'm facing the same view, but from a bit higher up. You can see one of the two impressive towers that guard the village part of the fortification. And to the right, you can see the remains of the former outer walls of the fortification. Much lower, you see that actually half of that has been taken down. And since I got my drone with me, why not take an aerial view of what Blankenheim is today? And as the drone rises up, the first thing you see is the seven mountains in the distance. We're not that far away from the River Rhine, but it's a very different landscape here. Let's take a look around. That is the view down the Sieg River Valley. You see between those two ranges, there's the city of Siegburg and then Bonn and the Cologne-Bonn Rhine Basin. This is the Sieg River Valley, you see, facing eastward. And here you have the village of Blankenberg, town Blankenberg, that is, with the two towers, the church in the back, and a section of the old outer walls. And down there, the parking lot in front of the fortress is my blue DF. Well, let's take a cruise through the village and leave out through the other gate, the second tower. It still is a climb, not quite as steep as the climb up, but still steep enough for slow going. A number of very pretty old-style houses can be found in this city, you know, in the traditional building style of the 16th, 17th, and early 18th century, which is woodwork. It's oak bars that form the basic structure of these houses. Up there to the right is the former market square with the church and what used to be the seat of the ruler. And with a view on a few other of these old houses. We're almost at the other end of town. Once we've turned around the corner there, we'll be facing the other tower and the exit of town. There we are, and slipping right through. And leaving Stadt Blankenberg. Now I continue my ride over the rolling hills that shaped this landscape outside of the rather deep river and creek valleys that are typical for this region. Outside of the valleys, riding is interesting. It's a lot of up and down, but you will find a good number of stretches where you can enjoy riding the hilltops, like here. I'm not in the mood for much more climbing today. So let's enjoy this while it lasts, and then take the way back down, beginning with a left turn in Züchterscheid, which is the village right ahead. And the next 4 villages will all have Scheid in the name. Züchterscheid was the first one, and Scheid, some people say it comes from a Celtic kaiton, means wood or forest. Other people say no, it comes from shed, and it means watershed. It's a settlement that is on the hill. Whatever it is, there now is Züchterscheid that is left behind, and the next one will be Oberscheid, which means upper Scheid. Then we have Mittelscheid, which is middle Scheid, and then we have lower Scheid, Niederscheid. So all 4 villages basically bear the same name, but with a specification as to the relative height they are positioned at. Enough said. I enjoy the downhill because it's the kind of a relation that I like. A shorter but steeper uphill, and then a longer, gentle downhill. I'd much rather like it that way than the other way around. There's a little uphill in between, but it's easily taken at 45 to 50 kilometers an hour because you come with full momentum. And the road points downhill already. And the final descent will be a bit steeper because usually the slopes on both sides of the river valley are fairly steep. So here I think there are 2 switchbacks to moderate the descent. There's number 1. And this now is the second. The end of this road is the main road on the Sieg River Valley, which I am passing now onto the other side will have to cross the river over a bridge and then climb up on the other side, because there's a nice piece of trail, not so easy to ride on the other side. Begins with a climb in the village of Merton. To the right is the former farm buildings, now is a retirement home. To the left is the castle still, which now is, I think it is an equestrian center of some sort. Up there, a left turn, and we're almost out of the village again and flying down on the side of the mountain towards Merton train station, which is, unlike many other village train stations, not inside the village, but quite some way away from the village, because the railroad runs more or less through the valley and not up on the mountains. So this is the train station. Basically, it's just two platforms on the side of the railroad tracks, and the trail runs along the tracks because the railroad has bridges, and the bridges can then be used to cross the river back and forth. These lands to the left all belong to the estate, the horseback ride-in center there that we've passed in the village. So here we cross the river. See it down there. And right after, the trail heads up the hill, leaves the railroad tracks, because these trails connect the villages with each other, and the next village is up on the hill on the left side of the main road. Can be done on the big ring, though. See, there's the next village. I turned off to the right again, crossed the railroad, and now on the other side of the railroad, running along the trail with the Sieg River Valley now to my right. And it's another interesting section of this trail. I have sometimes missed the turn that is now coming up. It's not a turn. It's you leave the trail at a point where you really don't expect to leave it. Wait for it. It's coming up. First time riding there, I almost hit that pole in the middle. And there's another such pole at the other end. Now, again, we're next to the railroad and taken the railroad bridge as a bridge across the river. Again, another uphill, and at the end of the hill, the next thing is we're crossing the railroad again. Wait for the end of this video and I will tell you a bit more about this particular crossing and why I'm waving here. down this bumpy little road and into the next little village. And you may have guessed it, just outside the village, I have to cross the railroad track again. Now I have to cross the river again before I get back to the point where I left the trail to go to the Stadt Blankenberg climb. The big dairy farm is ahead, and with this turn I'm back on the Sieg river trail that I came up on, and I will stay on this side of the river. Now the river is to the right until I'm back to Bonn. Well, not quite, but you will see. There's one more river crossing and back part of this video. Ahead is the little village, this time just outside of Hennef, from the other direction that I showed you on the way up. I really like these old houses. They have a particular flair and style. Having passed the city of Hennef, I thought, why not put in a pit stop at the Sieglinde beer garden and pub, which is actually on the other side of the river, and that is a pedestrian and cycling bridge been built to connect the village on the other side of the river to the trail system.
Ding dong. Danke.
So I'm crossing the river again, and we'll go back the same way, actually, because it's only a few hundred meters off the main trail. Very busy place on weekends, but during the week, rather quiet. Now for some apple pie and beer. And then back to the trail and towards home. These are the signals of urbanity, power lines, and the Autobahn bridges that I have to pass under. All in all, has been a nice ride with the occasional chasing of roadies. This here is my last chance. I'm almost back to the Rhine levee, and I've got a couple of roadies or cyclists ahead of me from the last traffic light. And now I'm waiting for an opportunity to pass maybe that little uphill that's coming up. That's a good occasion. Yep. And there I go. It has been a nice ride, and I I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I have for you 3 little scenes from this ride that I have put at the end because they don't really belong to the ride, but are something a bit special. First is this reconstruction of the bridge, a digger moving away for a few cyclists. That is something that I have not seen very often. You see it making room for the roadie in front of me, and not just for the 2 of us, but also for 2 trike riders who have been waiting on the other side. I've put these bars in place with the construction to slow cyclists down, and of course that takes away a lot of the momentum that you would otherwise use for going up that little hill up again on the levee of the Sieg River. So that's the first scene that I wanted to show to you. The second takes us back to that railroad crossing out in the country that you saw earlier. Now where I was stopped, there's a guy coming up from behind and pushing that button, because you have to push that button in order to open the gate. And I'm asking him whether he's there all day just for the occasional cyclist, and he says, no, not really. He just wanted to do me a favor, so I didn't have to go out. But his main mission there is to make sure that once the person, the cyclist, the pedestrian, the driver has passed through, the crossing is safe and can be closed again.
Aber wir haben jetzt erstmal Zugfahrt.
Okay, alles klar, danke.
Ja, bitte.
And now this is the third scene. As I ride through the town of Hennef, I see a red Velomobile in front of me. So when it turns off, I follow it and follow it until it stops. Because it's very rare that you're out there riding and you see another Velomobile. Okay, so much for today. See you another time. Bye-bye.